Welcome to Practical Parenting. Here with me is Chair of the Department of Pediatrics, Dr. Terry Nguyen, and I am Krystina, also from GBMC. Dr. Nguyen is bringing the expertise as being a pediatrician and consultant for many families, and I am just a mom who has a lot of, fun experience and questions along the way with you.
Thank you, Krystina. And you are not just a mom. You are a fabulous mom. You are engaged and you're very open, and you're open to learning on how to improve your relationship with your children, how to do this journey with them. So you're way more than just a mom.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited to be with you here today and talk about practical parenting.
So today's episode is going to be about temper tantrums. I know. Take a collective breath for us all to move past our PTSD and on to the conversation. So I think a good way to start this would be to just define what a temper tantrum is, because I think there's so many misconceptions about what it can look like and, what it actually means when your toddler or even an older child has a temper tantrum. So let's start with a baseline.
Tantrums. They can even happen as adults, right? It's emotional dysregulation. You have emotions, you don't know how to express them, and they may come out really wonky. For children, for toddlers, because they don't have the vocabulary yet. For older children, they may still not have the vocabulary. Or, adults, they're just so damn overwhelmed. And something has just, it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. So that's what it is. You have so many emotions bubbling up, and they're brimming over. Your cup is full, or your coffee cup has spilleth over. And that's it. There is no talking you back from the ledge. You have already teetered out on that ledge, and that's what it is for kids. They go from, I'm really happy, to I'm really upset. And there's no in between, right? There's not a lot of gray zone. There's just upset, happy. And what our job as parents is to help them get into the full spectrum of that rainbow of all the different colors of emotions. So it's the lack of emotional regulation is the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. And I think probably what will help guide the rest of our conversation is that plus the skills, the lack of skills in order to regulate the emotions, right, which is where we come in order to try and teach and build that emotional regulation. So I think tantrums, I feel like we can break them up into kind of three parts. So there's, what we can do maybe during the tantrum, what we can do as parents to regulate our own emotions, because I feel like oftentimes we get triggered and just add to the rolling ball of fire that's already in progress. And then what we can do sort of just after or outside the moment to mitigate in the future, or just sort of build that connection for later when they happen. So we'll start with what to do during, since that's probably the most stressful piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. We want to prevent them if possible. Mm-hmm. So you have to learn where the triggers are. I know we're going to talk more about that. But once the tantrum has started and your toddler is on the floor, pounding at the floor, bonking their head on the floor, step back. Okay, this is their tantrum. You don't have to get drawn into it. They're not going to hurt themselves. They actually know when it hurts to repeatedly pound their head on the floor. So pull yourself back, take some deep breaths, whatever your practice is to recenter yourself. And sometimes you actually have to leave the room because you're going to lose your mind because, like it or not, Mother Nature has given us all this wonderful automatic protection for our children. And when they cry, our stress hormones goes through the ceiling. So first, help yourself first, put the oxygen mask on yourself, and then you can do it for your child. So whatever your calming relaxation technique is, or whatever you do to recenter, do that. Take care of yourself, and then you can take care of your child. And no, this is not them doing it to you or doing it at you. They have an emotion that they can't express with words, and they don't know how to express it and let it out of their body. So yeah, it's all fours, fist pounding, feet smacking the floor, head, maybe against the wall or, on the floor. Let all of that energy dissipate. Okay, it's like once the snowball has started rolling down that hill, you cannot stop it. That avalanche has started. Let it just play itself out. Be there so that they know that you're not deserting them. Okay, but please don't try to talk with them. There's no rational conversation with your child in full meltdown, because then that's just going to trigger more distress for you. It's like, I am trying to stay really calm. Dear, listen to me. And the kid's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't think they're even hearing it.
They're not. They're like, wah, 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 right? So, yeah, put the oxygen mask on yourself, and then you can help your child. And no, this is not something that's being done to you. It's their way of letting out their distress.
I know 2 things I do. I like to set alarms on my phone throughout the day. So when they go off, I just take wherever I'm at, usually working, put my hand on and take 3 deep breaths, because I know that doing it just regular, when I really need to use it, I'll remember to go back and do it. So I feel like that's been hugely helpful.
I love it.
I love the point you made about knowing that they're not doing it to you, because I feel like that's an immediate thought that you have is just they're being disrespectful or they're challenging or whatever the case is. But I really love Dr. Becky Kennedy on Instagram, and she's got this thing she talks about called the most generous interpretation. So I just think to myself, okay, what's the most generous interpretation of this behavior? Because your mind automatically goes to the least generous interpretation, which is, like I mentioned, being disrespectful. And the most is usually the most accurate. So it's, oh, they wanted this and they're not getting it, point blank. It's very, cut and dry. And then you can kind of depersonalize it a little bit.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. And I love that you're practicing your relaxation or your calming techniques throughout the day. I'm a big believer in that. And anything that is sensory will help you. Okay, so whether it is focusing on a picture far away or looking outside the window and really zoning in on the fine details of the leaves, the marks on the leaves, the branches on the tree, but that just very, very focused visual, okay? Or even I do this thing where I rub my fingers together, so perhaps your thumb and your forefinger, and you're really just concentrating on the ridges of the fingers and feeling that. And it only has to be for about a minute. And as soon, you'll know when your brain has, flipped out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And then you can continue it a little bit more and then go on. The other thing is listening for the closest sound that you hear to you and see how that is, and then listen to the furthest sound. And maybe if you're really trying to concentrate on one sense, you close your eyes so you're really just counting on listening. When you're looking at something, you're really focused on the looking and observing, and maybe there's background noise going on, but you're not really paying much attention to it. And you know what? If your mind drifts, it's totally okay, right? That's what our minds do. Our minds go from thought to thought, jump to jump. It's our monkey mind. It's all right. Just say, hey, I was just looking at that beautiful tree out there, or I was looking at, the clouds. What are the cloud formations making? What animal are they, drawing pictures of? And that's incredibly relaxing. But in order for you to have that at your fingertips, you actually have to practice it like you do various times of the day so that it becomes an autonomic reaction when you are triggered by your child, your colleague, email, phone call, whatever. I love that you brought that up, Krystina.
Thanks. And it's kind of a double win, because throughout the day, the kids hear the alarm and they go, is that your breathing alarm?
Yeah.
And then they know that it's time to do that. So they will sometimes engage with it and sometimes not. But either way, I feel like just the fact that they're aware that I'm doing it, and that it's a technique I'm using, whether or not they engage, it's just still good to know that, mommy's practicing something to help calm down, what it's for and why.
And it's modeling, right? Our children model so much after us. And unfortunately, I don't know that I knew how much they modeled after me, right? So, you're spot on. The fact that you are modeling, I like to refocus, or I am doing things kind of almost preventative, right? I am relaxing. I am bringing my body back to center and my thoughts back to center, and I'm regulating. That's what you're showing your children, is that no matter what's going on, I can recenter back and re-regulate myself. And that's really what they're looking to learn. And, we can talk about things, but they need to see it. They need to experience it. So maybe you have a disagreement with your older than toddler, right? They can't have something, and you're like, no. And then it's starting to escalate, and you like kind of put a halt on it. Say, hey, put a word to it. I see that you're getting upset. I'm getting upset. This is before the full-out tantrum, okay? And you can model how you would press. I see that you're upset. I'm really upset. Let's both do X, Y, or Z. Let's take some breaths, or let's rub our fingers together. Later, I'll show people how to do a breathing technique that traces your fingers. But that takes you both out of that moment, that immediate moment where, tensions are high and, you're egging each other on, and you're going to both spiral, basically.
Yeah.
So that modeling is so key.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we talk about during the tantrum, your role and your child's role, I feel like it's become clear that it's really more about regulating yourself in that moment and sort of just not letting it get any worse than, letting them ride it out. So what can we do outside of those tense moments to prepare ourselves or even to teach the kids more emotional regulation skills?
So what makes you lose your mind? You don't get enough sleep, when you're hungry, right? So same triggers for children. When they didn't sleep as well last night, or they're sick and they didn't sleep well, they're hungry. It's lunchtime and you haven't served lunch on the dot. I know, it's like your pets too, right? Or thirsty, right? And the other thing for kids is they have no patience. They have no sense of time. If I have a thought in my head and I want this, I want it now. And mommy or daddy are working at the computer often, or if you're a pediatrician, you're answering a call, and you keep telling them 1 more minute. But it's actually not 1 minute. It's many more minutes. And while they're waiting, like for the first few times they might wait, and then they're like, no, it's got to be more than a minute.
Yeah.
And then they lose their mind. So maybe you save yourself, okay, all right, so let's do the quick check. Are they super irritable because they're hungry or thirsty? Are they just on a very tight string today because I didn't get enough sleep? If that's the case, then, tend to them faster than you would, okay? And if you say 1 minute, it really has to be 1 minute. Or you just drop your stuff because you're the adult in the situation, tend to their need, avoid the tantrum and the meltdown. You have saved yourself 10, 15 minutes at least if you can avoid getting to the tantrum. Once it started, the avalanche has started, it's got to play it out. But if you can catch it right there, and this is where your own personal self-awareness is so key, right? You're like, oh, I know where this is going. Have that, response ready. Because we're only in control of our own reactions. We're not in control of the reactions of our children. But also remember, if we're alert and aware of how to respond rather than just being reactive, that makes a big difference. I have to remind myself all the time. I mean, I don't think I did it very well as a mother of toddlers or young children. But after the fact, I'm like, oh, I could have done this and that instead of losing my mind. And, we call the witching hour 6 o'clock at night. Children are back from school or daycare. You're back from work and trying to make dinner and get dinner on the table. So nobody has any more reserve, right? So it's just as easy for us as parents, and we're just as guilty of also having the meltdown. So
no, we are not immune to tantrums.
Right. And so, but that's the only tantrum that we can help prevent is our own. And then also seeing like where, come on, we all know when things are just about to happen with our children often.
Yeah.
There are signs right there, and you can't ignore them, okay? Because the voice in the tantrum and the reactions get louder and louder until you have no choice.
Yes.
So maybe, yes, it is inconvenient. You're right in the middle of a thought or a sentence. Just complete that one thing. Just one thing. Don't go on. I mean, I can say this so clearly because I remember how many times I just tried to finish the paragraph rather than the one sentence. And then I had a crazy, maniacal toddler next to me screaming, yelling, and, it was just miserable for the rest of the evening. So regulate yourself, anticipate what your child might do, and model for them that you can try to keep your stuff together too.
Yeah, it's definitely easier said than done. But
Yeah.
So I had an incident recently, daylight savings time. I think we all know going into daylight savings time, it's just going to be a hot, hot mess.
Yeah.
And so you know that it's happening and you're just kind of going to be in survival mode, but it's hard to survive in survival mode, even if you know it's happening.
Yeah.
So one of my children in particular was having a rough day, not enough sleep, just a lot of meltdowns. And they were back to back to back. And our strategies, normal strategies, just felt like they weren't effective. And so our normal routine is, you're having a meltdown, pick you up, I'm going to pick you up, take you up to your room. We shut the door and we just kind of let it go in a safe, smaller place away from the other children or the other child. And so after maybe 4 times of doing that within an hour or two, it felt like it wasn't an effective strategy. But again, I'm not sure what else to do. That's our usual strategy. I don't really want to defray from that. But it also didn't seem like it was being effective. So I tried something else and it really didn't work. And it was just kind of let's just make it to bedtime and hope we all fall asleep at an appropriate time. So what should we do in those moments where even when we know it's happening anyway, and our usual strategies aren't working?
So you want to break the cycle, right? So after 2 or 3 times, your child knows they're going to act up and they're going to end up in the room and, the cycle will start again. So disruption.
Okay.
Maybe go outside and play with them. I know, radical, right? But let's not go back into that room. That's just going to spark and trigger more response, more reaction from your child. Easier said than done. It might be raining outside, and you're like, so you want us to go outside in the rain? Yes, go jump in the puddle.
Yeah.
Put your kids' galoshes on, but I think they call them something else now, and go jump in puddles with them. Disruption.
Okay.
That gets you out of fight and flight or freeze zone also, right? Because they cannot predict what's going to be the next thing. And that might help kind of break that cycle of like, I'm getting what I want, I'm going to cry, and then mommy's going to put me in timeout, and it just escalates. Every event builds on the prior one. So you had some screaming and unhappiness on the first. The second time, the volume goes up. The third time, it's just like, how can I outdo the prior event? So remember, can you disrupt this? Remember when your toddler kept trying to touch something on the TV screen and you would say, stop doing that. Stop doing that is like an invitation to keep doing it. And so what do? We distract, right? Well, hey, let's go and play with this. And suddenly they stop going back to that TV and trying to like fidget around with all of the remotes. So the same idea here. They don't know what's really triggering them, but anything, right? They're all prickly right now. So you got to switch it up.
And oftentimes I feel like they might be doing it as a way to get my attention and spend time with me in an unhealthy way. I do work remotely most of the time, and I feel like I'm there 24. If there were 25 hours in a day, I would be there 25 hours in a day. I feel like it's enough time, but for them, for some reason, it never seems like enough. So I wonder if it's a call for attention. And I notice that I'm still trying, even on those days, to force like cleaning up or doing things that we would normally do. And I feel like maybe sometimes on just those really rough days, I just need to let some of those things go. And if it's dirty at night, it's fine.
Krystina, you're spot on. You have a lot of insight about parenting. You could do this show instead of me.
Well, we're doing it together.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. They don't differentiate between positive and negative attention. They just know they want your attention. I mean, ultimately, that's what wins all toddlers and young children, and even adolescents, even like in weird ways, like they want your attention. So your teenager, okay? They may not talk to you and they may not want to be in your presence all the time, but they're kind of comforted knowing that if they're doing their homework in the kitchen and you're around, there's some comfort to that. So imagine your younger child, your toddler, your school-age child. It's like you said this, and I caught on to it. You said, I'm there like 25 hours a day. Yeah, but how much of that are you actually giving to undevoted time with your child. And I'm not saying that any of us should give 25 hours of our day to our children, because we'd all be, I don't know.
But it's probably less than...
Yeah.
It's probably a lot more unfocused than I think it is.
Right. So it's you want to bring it to quality time rather than the quantity. And, oh, so nice of you to say that, pediatrician. How am I going to do that since I'm working from home? Just as you schedule your time for breathing breaks, maybe you schedule time to play with your children every couple of hours. Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
But that means they can anticipate that in the morning at, X amount of time, or, you can set the timer for them. They're like, oh, Mom, it's playtime.
Yeah.
Go out. Everybody gets a break. You get a brain break, and they get a physical activity break, and they get you full-time one-on-one. And you can even, I don't want to do too much programming. You want to do some free flow, but, you could remind yourself, like 10, 15 minutes. But that is probably going to buy you a couple of hours of uninterrupted work time. Whereas, if they don't know that there's some planned time to hang out with you, every hour, Mom.
Yeah.
Mom, I need this. Mom, right? And then you're like, here, sit down in my office and color.
I mean, how many calls have I been on with you and they've come in and just been like, we have McDonald's for lunch? I'm like, please, I'm in a conversation. Can you please?
Yeah,
can we
but
save
you
this?
know what? For me, I'm just like, okay, let's pull you in.
Right.
And, they're feeling included. Remember, when they feel included, you notice, right? There's no escalation.
Yes.
So when we've had that experience together, I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? And then they're feeling really attended to by two adults and not just one.
True.
And, whatever it was, they came in there to disrupt and get like full attention. That idea, it was disruption. You disrupted what they thought was going to go down, and it was total change of how things turned out. So we do have some skills here that we just have to remind ourselves. Just because it's our child doesn't mean that we forget all the tools that we have on how to sense the situation, how to take in the situation, and work ourselves out of the situation and be preventative, or to be, thoughtfully responsive rather than unthoughtfully reactive, right? Because if every time your child comes into your room, you're like, stop, don't, you're using a lot of terminology that's kind of negative. But all they're seeing is, oh, if I do that, I get full attention. So I'm going to keep doing that. Little do they know that that's not really quite the attention that they want.
Right.
So
now, we talked about this offline. I want to bring it up because I think it's important learning. So I mentioned, when we pick her up, bring her into her room, we shut the door. And you mentioned earlier that we just kind of let them go. Now, for one of my children, they're very physical. So they tend to try to kick me or push me out of the way, or if they can find something to try and throw at me that I'm able to stop, I try to, stay in the room so that I can let them know that, my presence, I'm not scared of these feelings. I'm here with you for whenever you're ready. But I do not want to be injured in these situations either. So I'm trying to figure out what a good, healthy medium is for everybody, because as much as I do try to stop some of those things, it's challenging. And I imagine the bigger they get, the harder it will be. So any advice for people that are going through something similar?
Yes. And there's no one right answer, right? So you're going to have to mold it to your child's personality and how things are. First off, no, it's never okay to throw things at people or hit them when you're angry. But number one, why are you still there? Because they are trying to calm down. And if they see you, it's not, they are still seeing you as the face of not getting what they wanted. So they're taking out everything on you, but it's not you as mom. I don't like you, Mom. It's just, here it is, the feeling, right? So you're a representative of that feeling, and they don't like that feeling. So they're going to attack it. So get out of the way. I mean, if the avalanche is coming down the mountain, you get out of the way. You don't just stand there. So, hello, get out of the way.
I hear you. I think people now, when they hear the word timeout, it's a very taboo word. You don't do timeouts anymore. Don't send them to their room. Don't, let them deal with their, And so I think there's almost the exact opposite effect of being too present in the room when that happens. And so I think trying to find that happy medium of how do you let your child know that, you're not abandoning them and you want to validate their feelings and be there for them, but you will not participate in any violent behavior, what's the balance? So are there things if I need to walk out of the room to say before I do that, or like ways to approach it that make it more?
So there's the validation, right? I see that you're really angry and you're upset. You're not getting what you want. I think you need a cool down period. So you're literally explaining to them what's happening. So you're verbalizing their emotions and thoughts for them in words. And then you're going to walk them through what's going to happen. So you need some time to chill, and so does mom or dad. And so I'm going to leave you in here. I will be outside if you need me. And when you're feeling better, come on out and, we'll do that again. It's not abandoning. You said you'll be right outside, but I don't think you don't owe it to anybody or your child to be a victim, to be abused, or physically attacked, right? That's the anti of what you are wanting to do. You are trying to calm them. And by you being there, actually, it's like target practice for them. All right, think of it that way.
Okay.
So why put yourself in that spot? And it's going to escalate for you as well. You get more indignant because the more you're there, the more there's still, those feelings and those thoughts that they have. That's what you're representing. So they're still like all pumped up. There's no opportunity for the temperature to go down. And for some children, it takes longer. For some children, it's shorter. Again, it's that disruption, right? So the disruption part of like they were expecting that you'd be in there and tolerate all of this physical stuff that they were going to do and that you were going to listen to them rant and rave. If this were an adult, what would you do? If there was an adult that you were having an interaction with, you wouldn't put up with this.
True.
You would say, hey, I see you're upset and I'm also getting upset. I think we need time apart. And we can get back to this later. I'm going to leave. There was nothing disrespectful about that, but you expressed where both of you might be. And perhaps you would do this with a friend or a partner or a family member. Okay, well, you should also consider doing age appropriate, right, for the age of your child. But get out of harm's way, collect yourself so that you can actually, interact with them in a more reasonable state of mind. This is all great, right? Neither one of us are experiencing that right now. This, I have definitely had screaming matches with my children at the Target. It's a good thing that way back then I lived really far from where I work because people are like, who's that maniac mother? I have vivid memories of my two children literally like going at each other with shopping carts to see who could hit the other one. Okay. I just didn't.
Where did they come up with this?
Yeah, I know. I was like, and so what would you do to disrupt that, Dr. Terry? I'm like, I just have to scream right then and there, like, stop.
Yeah.
And yes, I know. I just told you, get out of harm's way. Well, they're about to mush the other child.
Right.
So I throw myself in. Okay. So there is no like cookie cutter approach, right? It's you have to know your child. You have to know what triggers them. You have to know also what calms them. And then also remember, as you're about to lose your crap, go, all right, so what do I want to model? Do I want to model you lose your stuff, I lose my stuff, we all escalate, and it's a big volcanic blow up? Or can, I kind of pull it together a little bit, put on my oxygen mask, disengage myself, put on your oxygen mask, and deal with this later. There is no rationalization of a tantrum with a 2 or 3-year-old. I kind of have to giggle every time I'm in the supermarket. And I see this child like losing their mind, and the mom or dad is like, well, dear, I know you didn't get that, but we can't. That's candy, and we're about to eat dinner. I'm like, they're just losing their minds. And you know what? Here's the disruption there. Take them out of the store, okay? Take them out of the store. Yes, I know your grocery cart now is lost. Or just go to the front desk. Why do I know this so well? Because I've done it. Ask the manager, hey, I just need to take a couple of moments and take my child out of your store. Could you just keep an eye on my cart, go outside, let them have their tantrum in the car. Stand right outside, okay? Don't forget your child in the car in the summer, okay? We don't want to create another scenario. But they just need some moments to like de-escalate on their own.
I'll actually give a really good tip that I use in the store. When we go in, they ask for everything on the shelves they need. And I say, oh, we can't get it today, but let's take a picture of it to remind us that we want to get it later. Now, I have 500 pictures of toys in Target and Walgreens and wherever we go.
Yeah.
However, it really reduces the arguments, and I never have to buy anything because by the time they've moved on, and then if somebody asks you, what does your kid want for your birthday? I just scroll through my list of pictures and throw out a couple things.
Genius. I love it. Yeah. Out of sight, out of
well.
mind for them, right? But you've like answered a need that they had requested. That's brilliant. I love it. I'm going to use that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we covered a lot. But are there any other tips or tricks that you wanted to mention or things we needed to touch on before we part ways?
I don't think so. I think we've touched on them all. So kind of the big take-home points are validate your children's emotions and feelings, help them name it, and model how you want to help them work through it, right? So that part about you losing your mind, try to keep that at like the last option.
Yeah.
And it's repetition. It's just like going to the gym. You have to keep your reps before you know what you're doing in the gym. It's the same thing with building habits and building routines on how to react for your children, how to regulate their emotions. That's what we're talking about, right? So model it, do it, and be consistent. After multiple repetitions, they know, sure, I'm going to lose my mind, but my mom's not going to hate me, not going to not love me. Mom is going to give me some time to carry through on my feelings and emotions, and then I can get it back together. I mean, they won't piece it together as that, but they'll know the routine of how to expect things will go.
Yeah.
And it's our job to, as the parent, and it's a hard job, okay, is to go, oh, I know, here's the trigger, hunger, thirst, inadequate sleep. Yeah, go through the list. What's triggering it this time? And what can I do? And remind yourself, 2 minutes here or 5 minutes here is going to save me a half hour of tantruming and trying to reorganize my child and my brain and my emotions, because then you're like the cat with, all of the hair standing straight up, right? You're like, okay, and now I'm going to go back and do my work, or I'm going to go and make dinner. I mean, if you don't have love in making whatever it is that you're doing, it comes across, right? So remember, a few minutes here will probably save you 5 to 6 times the minutes that you would expend by ignoring your child. And quality time over quantity of time.
Great takeaways. Yeah. Well, we started off with a really big bear of a topic, but we have a lot of other, really important topics, very common issues that parents have. And so we'll delve into them in future episodes. But I think probably the most important thing we all need to remember is that parenting is hard, and we got this, and we're here for you for your issues.
Absolutely. And, there's no perfection. I always tell my adolescent patients and my young adults, there's no perfection. Perfection only comes when you die. And so imperfection is real life, right? And we learn from our mistakes. And so imperfection means you're still alive and you're still trying and you're thriving. So go with it.
Yeah.
Go with it for yourself. Go with it for your child. Lessons learned by you or by your child worth 1,000,000 words, and what you will tell them. If you do this, this will happen, da-da-da-da. as long as the experience is not going to be incredibly harming to them or another person, let them go. Let them be, step aside, stand away from the spiraling avalanche snowball that's coming down.
Yeah.
And then know that you're not alone. We all go through this and we all survive it. And it's really important to learn some of those skills early on when your child is a toddler or a preschooler or a school-age child. Because guess what? The surprise is when they're adolescents, you're doing it again, except they're bigger. And so physical size is not going to control them. So it really is about how you deal with it mentally and, how do you work it through with them, right? So that they still feel validated and loved unconditionally and learn what the limits and boundaries are. So it
never
can actually
too early to learn, never too late.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, parenting is a difficult journey, but maybe we change that feeling into what's the excitement? What new thing am I going to learn from my child today?
Yeah. I like it. Positive perspective.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Nguyen, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you so much, Krystina.
Bye.
Bye.